turn me around, turn me around, no, turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let discrimination turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Gonna let discrimination turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom.
Good evening, and welcome to We Believe Digital Studios, Sizzling in Mississippi, Black Woman and White Man at the Crossroads. We're glad you're joining us tonight. My name is Chris Young, and right alongside we have Joni. Pardon me, I always want to go with the nickname. I give people nicknames sometimes. We have Ma'ati Joan Prim.
Yes.
How are you doing this evening?
Doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. It is Friday.
Happy Friday.
Friday.
TGIF.
Yeah. If only there wasn't Saturday to be worrying about. But yeah, it's going to be a busy weekend.
Yes.
I'm going to be heading out of town in the middle of next week, and there's always odds and ends, a million things to do.
Always.
Especially when you're doing a little pre-Christmas visit for the grandson.
Oh yeah.
So. But yeah, so that's the deal, and welcome back. We're really glad you're joining us. We've got a call-in number 800-492-5186, and we were talking earlier today and kind of outlining what we want to do for the show and try to pick up the discussion from last night where we started out on this topic of are all white people in America racist? And we try to go at that from many different levels. It seems like it's a pretty good bet that if you were educated in American public schools,
right,
the chances are the answer is yes.
Right.
And then of course, if you're really fortunate and can gain some. A broader view of the world, a macro view, and be able to see things objectively, you kind of begin to figure out that those pictures in the social studies book when we were growing up,
right,
it's really not what was going down.
Right.
Yeah. And the power involved in all that to set a script that's fictitious.
Yes.
And for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, people suffer because of that misuse of power.
Right. Yeah. The miseducation is so damaging. It's damaging to everybody. When you're not taught the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what we were always seeking, is just to tell the truth about history, and that will be sufficient.
Right.
Yeah.
And tonight we've got a couple of things to mention before we try to get on with that topic and attempt, hopefully with your help through call-ins or your comments in the chat. What can we do about it? What can we do about it as individuals? What can we do about it as neighborhoods, as communities,
right,
as a state? I mean, once again, when we look at the state of Mississippi, for those few that probably don't know, 50th in healthcare, 50th in infant death rate, 50th in overall life expectancy, 50th in COVID death rate, 50th in poverty, incarceration, 50th in racial equity index from the National Equity Atlas. It just it's just staggering. The racism and oppression that's present in this state, and so we'll try to answer that question, and we would really love you to join us and let us know what you're thinking, and let us know what your ideas are, so we can try and gain movement. I feel like certainly with the civil rights movement, there was traction, there was movement being made, but somehow or another, I just feel like in the last, I don't know, and then again with George Floyd, I feel like that kind of awakened a consciousness at a deeper level.
Yes.
But there's so decades between where.
Right. But there's a lack of formal education, institutionalized education, even in the civil rights movement. That wasn't a real potent thing. Mm-hmm. So black people were relegated to 2 chapters in the history books. Mm-hmm. One on enslavement and captivity, and the other one, the civil rights movement, and then that's it.
Well, that's the end of it, right?
Right. And so many other groups have sort of co-opted the civil rights movement until it's so watered down with fusion politics. It's really not indicative any longer of the identity politics that it once held. It's got a different identity, different political positions as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know I certainly still have heroes from that era, and we've got in Jackson, Mississippi, we've got people walking and talking down here that were absolutely a part of that era, and they're still here. Obviously, they're getting up there in years now. But and we're in the process of trying to reach out to some of those people and hopefully get them on the program. That'd be really neat.
It would be wonderful.
Yeah. So we had a political thing go on today that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
With the senator from Arizona, and you might say, well, what does this have to do with? But you know what it has to do? It has to do with power. It has to do with power and power sharing, and this. Female Caucasian Christian cinema senator from Arizona decided now that she's going to change her party affiliation.
Right.
So previously, she's going to become an independent now because she says, well, that's the way Arizonans are, is independent. But they elected her as a Democrat, and then on several key issues, her and Manchin from West Virginia, really hemmed up, bills going forward. Right. They just didn't have the numbers because they decided to opt out. Right. Manchin came around, more recently a bit, but I mean, I wouldn't look at him like predictable.
Right. No, you can't.
You can't. And
right.
So how do you? What would be your thoughts on this this woman, senator, changing parties like this midstream?
Well, we've had the election in Georgia now, so it's definitive that Warnock is going to be representing the Senate from Georgia. Right. And so it made it where if Sinema is leaving the Democratic Party and becoming an independent, it's a power play. Yeah. And so now she has more power than she ever did before, because it means that either the Republicans or the Democrats can court her.
And the whole concept, it kind of makes my brain go a little, the whole concept. She said, well, I'm still going to caucus with the Democrats. So let me get this right. So you're not reliable on the vote.
Right.
I should have looked up a percentage of votes where she did go Democrat.
Yeah.
But I spaced that out.
Okay.
But so you're going to caucus with the Democrats. You're going to be privy to all the information. You're going to sit in all the meetings.
Right.
But you're not really. But you want to be independent. like a fox in the hen house kind
Absolutely.
of situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the voters have no say in that
No.
until 2024 when she
Right.
runs again.
Right. Yeah. It seems unfair. It's certainly not a unifying type thing for her to do. Republicans and Democrats do need to reach across the aisle, but with her kind of standing in the middle of the aisle, she becomes the pretty girl, at the dance. Everybody is trying to appeal to her.
You're right.
And she's open for, being persuaded. And of course, with her persuasion comes power, because she can negotiate for things that are maybe particular to Arizona or maybe particular to her own political positions. So it seems very unfair.
And the timing, too.
Yeah.
So
right
now
after
we
Warnock.
have this black Senator Warnock being reelected. He just
Right.
had the short period and then gets reelected. Yeah. And the ink's hardly dry.
Right.
And she sucks all that out.
Right.
Sucks all the attention off that victory, if you will.
Yes.
And puts it squarely on herself.
Right.
Yeah. Tough stuff. You know what?
Right.
I did forgot to look up her voting record, but I did look up how many senators had changed parties, and I don't know if it just kind of crossed my mind. And lo and behold, I started in the '60s. Is what I did.
Okay.
Because and lo and behold, there's been eight senators that have changed party midstream.
Okay.
And it looks like it looks like 5 of the 8 were Democratic to eventually Republican, and then Lieberman in Connecticut.
Yes.
2006, he had been a Democrat for 17 years, and it says that he switched over to the Independent Democratic Party for his last 7 years.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't sure that existed, but that's
Right. Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's off a U.S. Senate webpage.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
so she isn't the first person to do it. Other people
Right.
have done it. It definitely she's the first woman to do it.
Right. And it's not that many people. 8 people in 60 years. If you think
Yeah, when you're
about
talking
it.
about 100 people per
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's that. And then we had another news story today that really caught our eye, of course, and that was the cop, or should I say the ex-cop, that was...
King.
Is that how you pronounce that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
King.
Yes.
Okay. So J. Alexander King, former Minneapolis police officer, he's the one that was kneeling on the back of George Floyd. You had the one guy... kneeling on George Floyd's neck as he claimed as he pleaded that he can't breathe, and then you had this guy on his back, and then you had another guy on his legs, then you had another cop who just made sure nobody interfered with all that.
Right.
Keep the bystanders at bay.
Right.
And thank God, and I hate the fact I've forgotten the young lady's name, but without that video,
Right.
there would be no justice whatsoever.
Right. He would just be another one of the statistics of one black person every 28 hours is murdered or killed by a police or policing agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this guy got 3.5 years for this. Three and a half years. He pleaded guilty to one count of aiding and abetting in second-degree manslaughter in order to get a second charge of aiding and abetting in second-degree unintentional murder dismissed. So he pled guilty to the lesser charge to get the heavier charge dismissed,
Right.
and people went along with that. And so, it's just a tough
It's horrible.
3.5 years.
As I was saying before, I deal with cases of wrongful convictions and cases of over-sentencing. And the plea bargains that are offered to other people, like black people, instead of life, you can serve 30 years.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
is what I've heard before. Well, we don't think you did it. We'll give you 10 years if you indict the other person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Point a finger.
And
he gets 3.5, and there's going to be some time served, I'm sure, in that. Whatever moment he walked past the jail, they'll deduct that from the 3.5.
Oh, they say about 2.
Yeah.
About 2. And when you first started speaking a second ago, for whatever reason, the thought ran through my mind, shooting fish in a bowl.
Yeah.
And I think of the symbology of that.
Yes.
And the
fish don't have a chance.
The fish don't have a chance. The fish being African American and other people of color, but certainly predominantly African American in this country, are just so looked down on and thought with disdain and
feared.
and feared.
Yeah.
And feared.
Right.
And which is kind of laughable, because when you get to know enough people and get in enough conversation, sooner or later the topic is going to come up.
Yeah.
And come to find out, it's not the white people that are more feared. Mm-hmm. It's not that possess more fear.
Yes.
It's the black people that have more fear.
Right.
They're more afraid of what these white, especially law enforcement officers, are going to do,
right,
than anybody is going to be of them.
Right.
It's not even in the same league from many people I've talked to over time.
Yeah. Every time there's a siren.
Which is not, I don't think, the easiest thing to admit.
Yeah.
But, just crazy.
Yeah. It's horrible. I mean, I remember when the 9 souls were murdered in the church in South Carolina, Mother Emanuel Church, and the effect that it had here in Jackson. And I remember I had opened my bookstore, and a white person came in, and everybody stiffened.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, that was, a wolf and sheep. He prayed.
Yeah.
He prayed with the group.
Yeah.
Walking in there, and of course, and I know I've said this before on the show that, I've never had anything other than a vibrant welcome when I go into a black church.
Yes.
I can't help but think that that's what he got.
He did.
When he went in there.
He said he did. Yeah. He said that he had kind of second thoughts about whether or not he should kill people.
That's right.
He said because they were so kind to him, and he decided to do it anyway.
Had his mind made up.
Yeah.
You just can't get your brain around it.
Yeah.
And
it's depravity.
It is depravity. Hey, here we are coming right up on the first end of our first segment. We thank you for joining us. We're glad you're here, and we'll be right back with you in just a couple of moments as we hear some commercials.
Let's read and learn together. Meet Mason. Written by Sherry Tate. Illustrated by David. Mason is a young, inspired learner. Walk with him as he uses his 5 senses to explore the world around him. Your young one can learn to identify shapes, numbers, letters, and more with Meet Mason. Available now on Amazon.com.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
SocratesGarrettNT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. SocratesGarrettENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into MDOT grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
Welcome back to Sizzling in Mississippi, where we're trying to do our best to talk about a wide variety of topics and illuminate different subjects of why Mississippi continues to burn, and whose hand that comes from, and who suffers from that, and to try to talk about it in a way that, in some kind of way, we can generate dialogue, we can get people thinking, and maybe we can move this needle in a positive direction to lessen the suffering that goes on for so many people here in this state, this beautiful, beautiful state that is just lives under a blanket of oppression and racism and being last in everything, and yet it seems like a whole lot of the powers that be, they don't care about that. So I'm not sure I can figure all that out. I know I can't figure it all out, but. So we're going to try to pick up on a conversation in terms of moving towards this interesting word, solutions. Solutions.
Yes. There are some. There really are. A lot of people are resistant to trying or attempting at all, or reluctant for reasons that they want to maintain the status quo. But for those of us who long to see change, we can do so for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So everyone who cares about other people, the existence of other people, the fate of our state, we should engage in things that are anti-racist. Mm-hmm. So, such as when we attend churches, that we see what our church's position is on racial oppression. Mm-hmm. And if it's not good, we should probably move along.
And right alongside of that, you can just ask yourself, if you've been attending a certain church for a year or 5 years or 25 years, how many times have you heard the pastor talk about the evils of racism? Right. How many times have you heard them talk about oppression and how horrible that is, and that is totally un-Christ-like, right. and that we can't show partiality for any one human being over the other, and that we're all in the same boat. Do you recall any sermons on that? Ask yourself that honest question. That could be helpful right there.
Right. Or you can start your own Black History Month program, Juneteenth celebration, Kwanzaa observance. Yeah, all of those type of things.
And sometimes there's going to be. Did you use the word resistance before? Yes. I think that sometimes there's resistance. I can remember probably 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I guess about 4 years ago, in Black History Month, I did a presentation at my morning meeting at work that, 35, 40 counselors, and did a presentation on this lady up in the is it Georgetown? My friend Thea would know, part of Philadelphia.
Okay.
And she got permission to do an art project around a Confederate monument in a park.
Okay.
And so now, and so what she did was she wrapped all around the outside of the Confederate monument reflective material that would, so when the little boy is walking by holding hands with his dad, they're not seeing a Confederate monument, they're seeing themselves. They're seeing themselves, and they're seeing themselves happy and holding hands and walking through their park in
Yes.
their neighborhood,
Uh-huh.
you know, and seeing a whole different, you know, but some of the looks I got were interesting when I,
Yes.
you know, when I did the presentation.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, I don't really care, but it's just, you know, and another thing I was thinking of too, I mean, how many times a week do you go to the store? Or how many times a month do you go to the store? What about a commitment for one time in a month or one time in a week to go to a different store that you're not used to going to? You know, down on Fair Street, there's your bookstore. And how many people that are readers or would be looking for a book to purchase would not be able to go in that store and find something of interest?
Right.
You have such a wide
Right.
variety of things.
Right.
And you also have other items that are not books.
Right.
That are interesting and
Yeah.
shiny objects and
Right.
all
Gift
kinds
items
of
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, what you can do is you can make a commitment,
Yeah.
right, to spend 10% of your income in black-owned quality businesses.
Supporting black businesses.
Right. You know, there was a woman, last name Anderson, who wrote the book My Black Year. And what she did was that entire year, she only spent money with black-owned businesses. You know, so it's possible. And it does something in terms of uplifting the community by providing an economic vehicle, money,
Right.
to, you know, the,
Critically important.
yes.
You know, we use the term a lot, you know, black economic engines.
Right.
And we're lacking them severely. And so, you know, how many white people have thought about, you know, a healthy sandwich or a healthy wrap or something, and you just never, if you're kind of like me, you're just going to stick with those burgers
Yeah.
to your own detriment.
Yeah.
But just make a decision. You know what? One day next week, I'm going to go get something that somebody calls some healthy food, and I'm just going to give it a try.
Right, right.
There you go, right down on.
On Ferris Street. Yeah, yeah. There's
Yeah.
Herbal Blessings
Yeah.
and Meals at Hill, and there's some other restaurants as well.
And at the beginning of all this, though, it has to be a willingness.
Yeah.
Has to be a drive.
You have to commit to it. You know what
You
I'm
have to
saying?
commit to it.
Yeah. Yeah, you sit down, you think about what kind of world do you want to see?
Right.
Do you want to see a world that's safer, that's less trouble, that's cleaner? Then it involves getting people who are disenfranchised enfranchised, making them a part of the community.
That's right. And
And-
you feel better about it, and of
Yeah.
course they feel better about
Right,
it.
and the world becomes a better place.
And how many times too? How many times too have we seen little kids, little black boys and girls, and little white boys and girls come together, whether it's at the school, at the playground, at the daycare center, you know, at the young ages especially.
Yes.
And, you know, they're all about, that's my friend, I love them. And, you know, they hug and grab a hold of one another. They just, why? Because they haven't learned.
They haven't been taught yet.
They haven't been taught to hate.
Yeah, they will be taught, unfortunately. And so perhaps what parents can do is not give that particular lesson to hate.
Yeah.
But it really, you know, unfortunately, it comes really down on the white side. It's not on the black side.
No question.
Yeah.
No question. So to make a commitment, to be willing to do something different, to acknowledge that that this is not some made up story here, as
Right.
you say very articulately, civil rights history is not the same as black history.
Right, it's not.
And people want to believe that, what from the time realizing this spans over many years, but for the time slaves were free, a lot of white people have the mindset that, okay, well, yeah, and it was horrible and it's over and that was then and everything's even now. Everything's level now.
Yeah.
It's not level.
Right.
It's not level. That's why we have two distinct school systems in Mississippi. That's why we have judges halting the transfer of millions and millions of dollars to schools that are just packed with white kids, while a lot of the kids left over in the public school, not all, of course, but here in Jackson, that's the case a lot of times, where it's a black city, it's predominantly black kids, and they get slighted those monies because people want to, the legislators, they want to give this money, rescue plan and different stuff, whatever they can. They want to give it to the modern day academies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That were built to protect segregation.
Protect. Yes. Right.
Yeah. It was a backlash against the forces of integration.
Absolutely.
From 1970. So
Absolutely.
You have all these academies that were created, but also in these schools, we need to see history being taught.
Yes.
And just as I said before, that civil rights history is not black history. It's such a teeny tiny morsel of it that if you didn't teach it, it really wouldn't matter all that much compared to the history of world history, global history of black people, especially in Africa.
Right.
If you get that, then you have upliftment. You know, you have people who absorbed the hatred and turned it into a self-hatred, now destroying that self-hatred. That becomes eliminated when you have a knowledge of self. But people do not know. A lot of churches now, black churches, celebrate Black History Month, but they celebrate it only for one Sunday. And so they encourage their congregants to wear African attire that Sunday. But that's the only Sunday where people feel that they should do so. And I've told people, I said, you can wear African attire any day of the
day.
Right.
Every day.
Right, because that's what I do. And they're like, really? And I know one lady, she said, well, I called my sister, and she said, yes, you can wear your daishiki outside of February. Yeah.
Imagine that. Yeah, I mean, it just gets so pigeonholed.
Right.
But then here in Mississippi, you know, the government itself doesn't even support that and doesn't support Juneteenth either.
No.
And yet, in opposition to the federal government.
Right.
You know, and yet Confederate History Month, absolutely. And then Confederate Memorial Day, state workers get a day off from work in Mississippi on Confederate Memorial Day.
I wonder how the black employees feel about that.
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, that really doesn't matter because we just cling to the past.
Right.
You know, and embedded in conservatism is an adherence to traditional values and traditional practices. But what are we really saying when we say traditional?
Right. Whose tradition?
Who set the term?
Yeah.
Who's you know? Who's shuffling this deck?
Yeah. Yeah.
So really interesting. And I just had another thought about little actions. Oh, it just came to me, and I'm watching the clock also. But you know, everybody's got gadgets. Not everybody, but a lot of people got gadgets these days and devices and all. What about 1 hour? What about 1 hour this weekend is just something that you can do. Go to history.com, log in there and start scrolling through all the different topics, or put in the search, founding of America. And believe me, you're going to read some stuff that will be contradictory to, if you haven't studied the subject, what you already know about that. And also, and I think I may have mentioned this one too before, the Park Service. The U.S. Park Service has pages upon pages on the internet of history, and I referenced it a lot in writing a free verse I did called American Greed, you know, that kind of traced a lot of the growth of this country and where the movers and shakers of that growth came from and what their intentions were and what they did.
Well, see, the movers and the shakers of this country aren't actually the Vanderbilts, the Fords.
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
The Morgans.
Yeah.
It's not them.
Yeah.
It's actually African people who came here even before enslavement.
Yeah, I should have said what I mean to say was the power brokers, the people that were,
Okay.
that were dictating how things went.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. After
So-
things were already established.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it's interesting too because when I go down to the city hall in Jackson,
Yes.
the placard outside
Yeah.
that this building was built on the backs of slaves,
Right.
and some of the stuff that goes on in that building today is
Right.
a little bizarre to me. It's
Right.
sometimes I feel like, encouraging some of those council people to come out there and read the.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. Really, what happened to black people wasn't slavery. It's called slavery,
Yeah.
but it really isn't slavery. It's captivity. Slavery. If black people had been under slavery, we would have fared far better. And the reason for that is that a system of slavery is a system of indentured servitude,
Yes.
and it requires payment. And it also requires that there's only a period of time in which one works. And it's work. It's not working 24 hours a day. It's not working until death, and it's not being whipped, bull-whipped, for whatever.
And who came up with those definitions, though?
Right. It's kind of like leave no child behind, and in the process, it's designed to leave many children behind. But slavery isn't what we got. If we had gotten slavery, we would have the 40 acres and a mule, and everybody would have it. Our names would not have been changed. We would have known our history. We wouldn't have children or family members taken from us and so-called sold to someone else. You can't actually sell a human being, but that's the term that's used. Slavery would have meant that there would have been a period of time between 3 to 7 years, and not from birth until death.
Yeah.
So what we had was not that. It was straight kidnapping, rape,
Captivity,
robbery,
right.
murder, captivity, torture until death. And the system of captivity was better than, in terms of money making, was highly profitable.
Yeah.
$1 could render $1,700.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to keep African alive. They didn't have to do that. Wasn't necessary. They used people like we use paper towels.
Right.
People were disposable. They didn't think about, oh, well, my investment, I have to hold this person for 5 or 6 years. They didn't have to. The truth of the matter is that when an African was stolen from Africa, the time that they got off of that ship of horrors until they died, at one time when there was a great deal of, at the highest times when there's a great deal of kidnapping, the average lifespan for someone whose primary role was in agriculture, chopping and picking cotton, their life expectancy was 24 months from the time that they stepped off of that ship until the time that they died. Now, if their central and key role was chopping sugarcane, like what happened in places like Louisiana, once they got off that ship, their life expectancy was only 6 months.
Right. Right.
And still, the money was, unbelievably
Sure.
profitable. It was a unbelievably profitable business, and one in which a lot of people still wish they could go back to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to step aside for just a couple of commercials, and we'll be right back with you.
Let's read and learn together. Meet Mason. Written by Sherry Tate. Illustrated by David. Mason is a young, inspired learner. Walk with him as he uses his five senses to explore the world around him. Your young one can learn to identify shapes, numbers, letters, and more with Meet Mason. Available now on Amazon.com.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earthblend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
And welcome back to Sizzling in Mississippi. We're glad you're here. Just trying to talk this through about possible solutions for the oppression and the racism that's going on here. Another thing that I feel like I've learned so much is through visiting museums, and we have civil rights, a beautiful civil rights museum here in Jackson, Mississippi. I know the National Civil Rights Museum is in Memphis, Tennessee, really behind what was the Lorraine Motel, and I visited there about 4 years ago, and also the latest Smithsonian museum, the National Museum for African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., it's a staggering. They have timed admissions up there, and it's just a extraordinary experience. And that's a commitment that you could make to go and visit a museum to learn things that you just probably didn't pick up in the public schools, but you may well learn new things by going to these museums. One more little commitment that you could make.
It's possible. The museums that I have visited that deal with the history of black people in America are slanted and inaccurate.
Okay. Yeah. Well, again, I went to those, and I feel like I'm richer for it. I feel like I gained very much from the experience. So I'm glad they're there, and people can. That's something that people can do. Anything else on the solutions end that before we shift over? I think we got about 10 minutes to go.
Okay. You can just decide not to be depraved. You can decide, to be an anti-racist. You can just determine in your life that you're just not going to go around abusing people based on physical characteristics, cultural references. Mm-hmm. You can just decide not to do that. Yeah. Just like they decide to do it, you can decide not to.
It seems so simple when you say it that way, but it's really what it all comes down to.
Right.
And then for me, it kind of begs the question: what has to happen for someone? What has to happen for someone that knows in their heart mm-hmm. that they're not leading that they're leading a life that's wide open to racism and oppression, or even in participating in it? Because I kind of believe that if you're not taking actions against it, you're
right.
participating in it.
Right.
So I like to ask that question. What has to happen in a person's life before they're willing
well, that's
to
the
do
thing.
different?
I mean, when you have to counter the things that you're kind of forced to do mm-hmm. in terms of buying certain things like electricity or, your livelihood. You may work for a company that is oppressive or repressing people based on race, and you can decide that, I'm going to counter any of my things that I'm doing that help to maintain a racist system, and I can I can do things to counter that. On the weekends, I can volunteer to do such and such. I remember when George Floyd was murdered. All of a sudden, I had white customers.
Yeah.
And I never had before.
Really?
Right. I had maybe one customer, a white person a year who would come in, and usually they would leave without buying anything. And that's, anyone's choice. But once George Floyd was murdered, then for a few, maybe about 8 weeks, people came in and would buy books on how to be an anti-racist or, things like that, books on racism, different history books, and they did that for about 8 weeks.
You think if you could put a sign up in the window, white people welcomed here or something, do you think that could help?
They don't walk past the door, so it probably wouldn't do much good.
Well, it is Fair Street.
Yes, yeah.
How about that, local Jackson folks, white folks in Jackson, how about that? When's the last time you drove down Fair Street? How about taking a slow drive down Fair Street? It's something that you could choose to do and see with your eyes the decimation of so much that was once a thriving black business community, thriving beyond what I can put into words. And you used to visit during those times as a young person.
I did.
And so you know far better than me. And you just take a count, see what's active today, see what's boarded over, see what's been vandalized. And just that's one little choice that you could make.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, it's, let's see, 46. We got another 5 minutes. Do we dare, 5 or 6 minutes, do we dare tackle this community organizing versus activism?
Well, I think when we talk about solutions to racism, it's important to know the distinction between the two because they are not one and the same.
Not the same thing.
And so if one is thinking that community organizing is something that will promote anti-racism, it's actually the opposite.
Right.
It's community organizing is when outside entity could be a religious organization such as a church or social organization, social agency, or a private business or public business funds someone to go into a community. And it looks like, they're there to assist, there to promote diversity or to help people with upliftment, community upliftment, and really what it is it maintains the status quo.
So are you saying that there's no productive community organizing where people are empowered and they get a chance to get behind a cause or to influence maybe an underrepresented group or something like that? You don't.
But see, they don't do causes. They don't do causes. Community activists will do causes.
Yeah.
Yes. There is an incident that happens, and black people actually mobilize faster than any other racial group. And so there you will see the leaders of that mobilization. And they fight
with activists.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they will fight for a cause. They're not paid by anyone. They're not there with an agenda that is against the people. It's grassroots movement is really what it is.
So what I think I heard you say before with community organizing, it may look on the surface like it's one thing, but who's paying those people, and what are they really? And did those people even know actually what the end result will be of the work that they're doing?
Right. I mean, there's been a case of a building that was in a black neighborhood, and it was the best built building, and it was a YMCA, and it was given to a white woman. and she came in, and the building is worth at least $1 million, and she was able to get it for $10 and start her own program that's been funded by, again, these outside entities. Not that it's nothing wrong with being an outside entity as long as you have the same value system as community. But the problem is the value system isn't shared.
Okay.
Right. Their value system is to maintain the repression.
Yeah.
And that's what has happened in that particular example that I gave.
Now, we've had here in Jackson with our water issue, we've had the Poor People's Campaign come to town 3 different times.
Right.
A Reverend William J. Barber II.
Right.
Been involved in with repairs of the breach and the Poor People's Campaign for a long time. Minister of a church in
North Carolina.
Greensboro. So I forget the city in North Carolina. Very personable guy. I was able to speak to him for a couple of minutes the first time he came to town. That's an example of activism.
Right.
And what happened was, he's leading the charge and telling the world, and he put the first march and the rally that followed the march. Joy Reid with MSNBC actually interviewed him, remotely.
Okay.
And he was right there. He just finished stepping from the microphone. Brought together hundreds and hundreds of people, brought resources out for a lot of people, reinforced the position that the state has been sliding this Jackson community, environmental racism,
Right.
Starving with to go months and months without water. I heard Jackson State again today is without water for a part of the campus. They had a major water main break yesterday.
Okay.
So anyway.
But yeah, and that's an example. Now, he wasn't the first person, but he does have an organization that is more of a grassroots styled organization.
And PAI, and PAI, right? Rukia Lumumba's organization.
Right.
People's Advocacy Institute.
Right.
Activists.
Right.
Trying to promote change and hardball, not soft-tongued people.
Right.
Really trying to bring about change. Well, very good. We've come to the end of our time, and we thank you so much for joining us for this Sizzling in Mississippi episode. We're going to take a break over the weekend, and then we'll be back on Monday and Tuesday night for more shows at 6 p.m. on Monday and 6 p.m. on Tuesday. And then we're going to take a break for a variety of different reasons and so forth, and then we'll reach back out to you after that. But again, thank you for joining us tonight. And again, all these videos are archived with YouTube and Facebook. The We Believe Digital site is being revised right now, but eventually they'll be there and through Vimeo, and so you can always go back and look at episodes if you were not able to make it when they were live. And we thank you so much for your time and wish you a good evening and a good weekend. Take good care of yourselves and the people around you, and stay safe out there.
Turn me around.